Hello there, everyone. Welcome to Whisper Zone. I am your storyteller, and I'm here to guide you tonight. I know many of you use these videos to drift off to sleep, so before we begin, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. I'm always curious. Where are you watching from, and what time is it in your part of the world? Now, find your cozy spot and relax. I never should have answered that voice in the woods. But when you hear your dead wife calling your name in the middle of the night, logic flies right out the window. I'm getting ahead of myself, though. Let me start from the beginning, from when things first started getting weird in Gila National Forest. My name is Daniel Martinez. I used to be a Marine Scout sniper, but these days I work as a park ranger. After my wife Sarah died from cancer 2 years ago, I couldn't stand staying in Yellowstone anymore, too many memories. So I transferred here to Gila National Forest in New Mexico, thinking some quiet time alone would help me heal. Turns out, I couldn't have been more wrong about the quiet part. It started with the cattle. Johnson, one of the local ranchers, called me early one morning about a dead cow. Now, losing cattle isn't unusual out here. We get mountain lions, wolves, that sort of thing. But this was different. When I got there, I found the cow laid out like it had been in surgery. The cuts were too clean, too precise. No wild animal could have done that. Never seen anything like it in my 40 years of ranching, Johnson said, scratching his gray beard. Look at how clean those cuts are, Danny. It's like whatever did this was using a scalpel. I took pictures and filed a report, but something about it made my skin crawl. Maybe it was the way the ground around the cow felt cold, even though it was a warm spring morning. Or maybe it was the weird yellow powder I found scattered nearby. It smelled like rotten eggs. A few days later, Tom Running Bear, one of the local Navajo elders, showed up at my station. He was a serious man, not the type to get spooked easily. But that day, his hands were shaking when he handed me a cup of coffee. "You need to be careful, Ranger Martinez," he said. "The boundaries have been crossed. They're walking where they shouldn't be walking." I asked him what he meant, but he just shook his head and told me to watch for the signs. I didn't take it seriously then. Wish I had. The signs kept coming. First, we found ancient rock drawings vandalized with symbols I'd never seen before. Twisted shapes that hurt your eyes if you looked at them too long. Then came the fires. Perfect circles and triangles of burned ground appearing overnight, with no clear source of ignition. But it was the animals that really got to me. One morning I woke up to find every deer in a 5-mile radius had disappeared. Just gone. My dog Max, usually the calmest German shepherd you'd ever meet, started barking at shadows. He'd stare into the dark forest for hours, growling at things I couldn't see. The footprints were what finally convinced me something was really wrong. I found them while patrolling the Eastern Trail, regular boot prints that suddenly turned into something else mid-step. The front half looked human, but the back half. I've been tracking animals for 20 years and I've never seen anything like it. It was like watching someone transform right there in the dirt. My radio started picking up weird signals too. Late at night, between the normal park chatter, I'd hear voices speaking in languages I didn't recognize. Sometimes they sounded ancient. Other times they just sounded wrong, like someone trying to speak with a mouth that wasn't made for human words. Then Johnson called again. This time his voice was different, scared in a way I'd never heard before. "I saw her, Danny," he whispered into the phone. "Last night, walking past my window. It was Sarah." My heart stopped. Sarah, my Sarah, had been dead for 2 years. But Johnson described her perfectly. The blue sundress she loved. The way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she was thinking. "That's not possible," I told him, but my hands were shaking as I hung up the phone. The next morning, I found a ritual. Site deep in the woods, bones arranged in patterns that made no sense but somehow felt important. The air around them was ice cold, and that same sulfur smell hung heavy in the air. As I stood there, my breath forming clouds in the unnaturally cold air, I realized Tom, Running Bear, had been right. Something had crossed a boundary. Something was in my forest, and it was just getting started. I checked my old Winchester Model 70 rifle that night, the same one I'd used in the Marines. I had a feeling I was going to need it soon. As I sat cleaning the gun, Max suddenly stood, up hackles raised, and stared out the window into the darkness. And then, carried on the wind, I heard it. A voice I thought I'd never hear again. "Danny! Danny, please help me!" Sarah's voice. I stood there in my cabin, frozen, as Sarah's voice drifted through the window again. Max was still growling, his ears flat against his head. I knew I shouldn't go out there. Every bit of training from my Marine days was screaming at me to stay put, but it was Sarah's voice, my Sarah. "Danny, I'm cold, please help me." I grabbed my rifle, flashlight, and radio. "Max, stay," I commanded. He whined but obeyed. Smart dog. The moon was bright enough to see by, but I kept my flashlight ready. The voice was coming from the thick pine forest behind my cabin. As I walked closer, the temperature dropped so fast I could see my breath. "Sarah?" My voice sounded, small in the darkness. Something moved between the trees, a flash of blue, the same color as Sarah's favorite dress. I followed, my boots crunching on pine needles. The tracks I found made no sense. They started as normal footprints in the dirt, then suddenly went straight up a sheer rock face like whatever made them could just walk up walls. That's when my radio crackled to life. Through the static, I heard Sarah's voice again, but this time it was wrong. It sounded like someone trying to copy her voice but couldn't quite get it right, like when you hear a recording played backwards. I switched off the radio, and that's when I saw it. My ranger uniform hanging from a tree branch. It was torn to shreds, but there wasn't a drop of blood anywhere. Just that same sulfur smell from before. I radioed for backup. While waiting, I spotted something that made my stomach turn. Hidden behind some bushes was a small cave opening. Inside, I still have nightmares about what I found inside. The walls were covered with faces, not pictures, but something like masks made of... I don't want to think about what they were made of. Each one looked frozen in fear. Over the next few days, things got worse. I'd find dead animals left on my doorstep like gifts. Rabbits, deer, even a mountain lion once. But they were all arranged carefully, almost like they were trying to tell me something. The cattle mutilations kept happening too. More ranchers reported finding their animals with those same surgical cuts. But now they were finding weird symbols carved into the bones. Then other rangers started calling in with strange reports. Mike, who'd worked the north section for 15 years, called in a panic one morning. "Danny, I just saw myself walking through the trees," he said, his voice shaking. "But I was in my truck the whole time. How is that possible?" Max started acting. Stranger, too. He'd bark and growl at people he'd known for years, even other rangers. It was like he could see something about them that I couldn't. The nights became the worst. Strange lights would dance between the trees, not flashlights or campfires, but something else. They moved in ways that lights shouldn't move, making patterns that hurt to look at. Our radio communications got so bad we could barely use them. Every transmission was filled with screaming and voices speaking those strange languages. Sometimes we'd hear our own voices coming through, saying things we'd never said. One night I was doing my usual patrol when my truck's engine died suddenly. In the silence, I heard footsteps approaching. They sounded wrong. Too many of them. Moving too fast. I grabbed my rifle and got out, sweeping my flashlight across the trees. That's when I saw it clearly for the first time. For a second, it looked like Sarah, perfect in every detail. Then its face changed. The features melted and shifted like wax under a flame. Its eyes turned yellow, reflecting my flashlight like an animal's would. But these eyes had something else in them, intelligence and hunger. It smiled at me with too many teeth. I fired a shot more out of instinct than anything else. The thing moved so fast it was just a blur. By the time I got back to my truck, the engine was working again, like nothing had happened. But something had changed. Now it knew I had seen it. Now it knew I would fight back. And I think that's exactly what it wanted. When I got home that night, I found something on my doorstep. Sarah's locket, the one we buried her with. Inside was a photo of us on our wedding day, but our faces had been scratched out. The message was clear. The game was about to get serious. Everything changed when the Anderson family went missing. They were experienced hikers, Mom, Dad, and their teenage son. But they never came back from their camping trip. Their empty tent was found 3 days later, still zipped up from the inside. Their sleeping bags were warm, like they'd just been slept in. I knew what had taken them, and I knew I had to do something about it. I gathered a search team. Myself, 3 other Rangers, and Tom Running Bear, who insisted on coming. He brought something with him, a small pouch of silver bullets. "These will hurt it," he told me quietly, "but they'll only kill it during the blood moon. That's when it's most powerful, but also most vulnerable." I loaded one into my Winchester, keeping the rest in my pocket. The weight of them felt right somehow. We started our search at dawn. Tom drew protective symbols in the dirt around us with white chalk, showing us how to draw them ourselves. "If you get separated," he said, "make this symbol. It won't come near it." By noon, the forest felt different. The birds had stopped singing. The air felt thick, like right before a storm. That's when our radios started picking up voices, our own voices calling for help from different directions. "Remember," I warned everyone, "don't split up no matter what you hear." But it didn't matter. The thing was smart. It waited until we were crossing a dense part of the forest, then started calling out in perfect copies of our voices. Bill heard his daughter screaming for help and ran off before we could stop him. Sarah, another ranger, followed him. We never saw either of them again. Mike was next. He swore he saw himself standing between the trees, waving him over. When he stepped forward to look closer, the ground beneath him just disappeared. There was nothing we could do. Now it was just me, Tom, and Chris, our newest ranger. We found its lair, a cave deeper than any I'd seen before. The walls were covered with those same symbols from the petroglyphs, but they moved when you looked at them directly. Scattered around were trophies, watches, backpacks, camping gear, all belonging to missing hikers. That's when we saw it in a puddle's reflection, its true form. No wonder it liked stealing faces. What we saw in that water, it wasn't meant to be seen by human eyes. Chris panicked and ran. The thing caught him before he could even scream. But something strange happened. When Chris's flashlight beam hit my wedding ring, the silver band reflected light onto the creature. It hissed and backed away, leaving Chris alive but unconscious. "The blood moon rises tomorrow night," Tom said, helping me carry Chris to safety. "That's when we can end this. But it won't be easy. It's been hunting these forests for hundreds of years." We got Chris to the ranger station and called for backup. While waiting, I felt a familiar presence behind me. I turned around and there was Sarah. But this time, something was different. Her eyes were kind, sad, like they used to be. "Danny," she said softly, "I know you know I'm not really her, but I need to tell you something. The real Sarah sent me." My hands shook as I raised my rifle. "Why should I believe you?" She reached out and touched the locket around my neck, the one the creature had left on my doorstep. "Because I know what's inside. Not the scratched photo it left you, but the real photo. The one where you're both laughing because the camera timer went off too early. Only the real Sarah would have known that. She told me everything. How to trap it where it was weakest. Then she started to fade. I have to go now, Danny, but remember, even monsters can die. You just have to know how to kill them." As she disappeared, the wind carried her last words. "Just please be careful. I don't want to see you on this side yet." Tom and I spent that night preparing. We drew protective symbols around the ranger station and loaded our guns with silver bullets. The blood moon would rise the next night, and we had one chance to end this. Looking back, I wish I'd known just how right Sarah was about being careful. Because what happened next? Well, that's the part of the story I still have trouble telling. The blood moon rose big and red over Gila Forest, painting everything in a strange crimson light. Tom and I had picked our spot carefully, a narrow canyon with steep walls. I'd Spent all day setting up traps, marking protective symbols and preparing for what was coming. "It will be drawn to the canyon," Tom said, checking his rifle one last time. "The old stories say these creatures can't resist a good hunt. Your wife's spirit gave us the perfect bait. You." I touched Sarah's locket around my neck. Tom had helped me fill it with crushed silver bullets, turning it into a weapon. Now we just had to wait. We didn't wait long. It started with the whispers, dozens of voices all at once. My parents, Sarah, my old Marine buddies, even people I'd forgotten about. They echoed off the canyon walls, getting closer and closer. Then, the shadows started moving wrong. They stretched and twisted, forming shapes that shouldn't exist. The air turned ice cold, and that familiar sulfur smell filled my nose. I saw it step into the moonlight. First, it looked like Sarah again, but its shape kept changing, shifting between different faces I recognized, then faces I didn't. Finally, it settled on something else, something ancient. Its skin was like dark leather, stretched too tight over a frame that wasn't quite human. Its eyes glowed yellow, and its mouth, I still can't talk about its mouth. "Clever hunter," it said in a voice that sounded like rocks grinding together. "Using the moon against me. It's been so long since anyone knew the old ways." I raised my rifle. "Let's finish this." It moved faster than anything I've ever seen. One second it was 30 feet away, the next it was right in front of me. I fired, and the silver bullet hit it square in the chest. It screamed, a sound that made my ears bleed, but it didn't die. Instead, it knocked me down, sending my rifle sliding away. Its claws ripped into my shoulder, and the pain was like fire. I could feel something cold spreading from the wounds, like poison. But that's when my first trap worked. It stepped into a hidden circle of those protective symbols Tom had taught me. The creature howled as white light shot up from the ground, trapping it for a few precious seconds. I rolled away, pulling Sarah's locket from my neck. The thing broke free and lunged at me, but I was ready. I threw the locket straight at its face. When it caught the locket, just like Sarah said it would, the silver inside burned its hands. "This forest has been mine for centuries," it snarled, its face rippling between shapes. "The blood moon gives me power." "The blood moon makes you mortal," I said, and fired my last silver bullet. The shot hit the locket, which was still in its hands. The silver exploded outward like shrapnel. The creature's screech shook the whole canyon. Its body started to crack, red light pouring out from inside. "You've killed this form," it said, its voice now sounding ancient and tired. "But we have been here longer than your kind. We will always be here, in the dark spaces." It exploded. In a blast of red light and that sulfur smell, the force knocked me back against the canyon wall. Everything went dark. I woke up in the hospital 3 days later. Tom was there, looking exhausted but alive. My shoulder would never work quite right again, and the doctors couldn't explain why the wound stayed so cold. The thing's last words came true in a way. The forest changed after that night. The areas where we fought still feel wrong. Plants grow twisted there, and animals avoid it. The rangers marked it as a restricted zone, but sometimes hikers still go missing. I took a desk job after that. My climbing days were over anyway with my bad shoulder. Every now and then, I still hear whispers in the night, but they're not Sarah's voice anymore. I think she finally found peace. But sometimes, on very quiet nights when the moon is full, my dog Max still stares out the window and growls at something I can't see. On those nights, I make sure all my doors are locked, and I keep my rifle loaded with silver bullets close by. Because Tom told me one last thing before I left Gila. "You didn't kill it," he said. "You can't kill something that's been here since before people. You just killed its favorite shape, and somewhere out there it's learning to wear a new one." I don't go into the forest at night anymore, but sometimes I dream about yellow eyes watching me from the darkness. And in those dreams, they're wearing a face I haven't seen yet. The Ice Walker, Act 1, The Cold Sets. And you've seen a lot of strange things in my 20 years as a park ranger in White Mountain, but nothing like what I found that morning. The deer was frozen solid, standing up, its legs still positioned mid-run. Its eyes were wide with terror, frost coating its eyelashes. The weirdest part? The temperature had only dropped to 28 degrees Fahrenheit last night, nowhere near cold enough to flash freeze a running animal. I'm Bill O'Connor, and after spending most of my life in these mountains, I thought I knew all their secrets. I was wrong. The first signs came during what should have been a normal January patrol. The weather folks were calling it a record-breaking cold snap, but something felt different, wrong. In all my years here, through Olympics training for biathlon and 2 decades of rescue operations, I'd never seen the animals act this way. They were all running south, not just deer and moose, but even the bears that should have been deep in hibernation. My radio crackled. "Bill, you there?" It was Jenny from dispatch. "We've got another missing hiker report, 3rd one this week." "Location?" I asked, already heading back to my truck. "Near Mirror Lake. Family of 4 this time." Her voice suddenly cut out, replaced by a strange crackling sound like ice forming on the radio waves themselves. That's when I saw them. Perfect circles of ice, surrounding our ranger station. They hadn't been there an hour ago, and there hadn't been any rain or snow. The ice was crystal clear, like glass arranged in 3 perfect rings. My boots crunched as I walked over to examine them. The ice was warm to the touch, which made no sense at all. Later that afternoon, I found the ancient warnings. I was checking our old maps when Mike, one of the local Abenaki elders, came by the station. His face was grave as he pointed to markings. "On the oldest map we had, you're missing people," he said quietly. "They're in its hunting grounds." He wouldn't say more, just handed me a weathered piece of paper covered in tribal symbols. The translation made my blood run cold. When the winter hunter wakes, the wind carries screams of the eaten ones. That night, the temperature dropped. Another 20 degrees. I sat in my cabin, looking at photos of my kids from last weekend's visit. Sarah and Tommy, living with their mom in Boston now. Part of me was glad they weren't here, because something was definitely wrong in these mountains. My thermometer showed 10 degrees inside the cabin, even though my heater was running full blast. Outside, the wind began to howl, but the sound was different, almost like words. I could have sworn I heard laughter in that wind, high and cold and hungry. The radio came to life again, but this time there were no voices, just the sound of ice cracking and something that might have been breathing. Deep, ragged breathing, like something huge was standing right outside my door. I checked my rifle, loaded with the special rounds I used back in my Olympic days. 20 years of experience told me to be ready for anything, but something deeper, something primal whispered that no amount of preparation would be enough for what was coming, because the cold wasn't just setting in, it was hunting. And we were all its prey. The Ice Walker, Act 2. First signs, I found the first body at dawn. The sight made me sick to my stomach, not just because of what I saw, but because it didn't make any sense. The hiker was frozen solid with parts missing, like something had been eating while the poor soul froze to death. But the strangest part was the tracks around the body. They started in the snow next to the victim, continued for about 10 feet and then just stopped, as if whatever made them had vanished into thin air. My partner Dave and I called in the recovery team. While we waited, I noticed Dave acting weird. He kept staring at the body, not with horror like you'd expect, but with something that looked almost like hunger. "You okay?" I asked him. "Yeah, just hungry," he said, then seemed to snap out of it. "I mean, sick. This is sick." The radio at my belt crackled to life. Through the static, I heard screams, not normal screams, but something that sounded like a mix between a howling wind and a human voice in agony. I've heard all kinds of animal sounds in these mountains, but nothing like this. That afternoon, I visited old Joe Thompson at his cabin. Joe had been living in these mountains longer than anyone else I knew. He was sitting by his fireplace, but his cabin was freezing cold inside. "Knew you'd come asking eventually, Bill," he said before I could speak. "It's happening again, just like in 52. What happened in 52? Whole search party disappeared. 7 people. They found pieces of them in the spring, all frozen solid. Despite the warm weather, my pa was the only survivor. Said something was hunting them, something that brought the cold with it. I wrote everything down in my notebook, but my pen kept freezing. Back at the station, I found all our food supplies frozen solid, even the canned goods. The thermometer read 40-degree Fahrenheit inside the building, even though the heater was working. That's when Dave showed me what he'd found. An old burial ground uncovered by the unusually harsh weather. The stones had strange markings on them, similar to the warnings Mike had shown me. But what really got to me were the bones. They were human, but they had teeth marks on them. Not from animals, from human teeth. The rest of that day felt wrong. Time seemed to move differently in certain parts of the forest. I'd check my watch and find that hours had passed when it felt like minutes or the other way around. The snowstorms that came and went made no sense either. The sky would be clear one minute, then a blast of ice and snow would appear out of nowhere and disappear just as fast. That night, I tried calling my kids, but the phone was dead. Through my cabin window, I saw something that made my heart stop. There was a strange light in the snowstorm outside, moving like it was searching for something. And in that light, I saw Dave standing in the snow, completely still, staring at my cabin. He stood there for hours, not moving, not seeming to breathe. The temperature kept dropping, and I could hear that strange laughter in the wind again. But now it sounded closer and somehow hungry. I checked my gun again and added something new, a flare gun and some road flares. Something in my gut told me I'd need them soon. Whatever was out there, whatever was happening to Dave, I had a feeling things were about to get much worse. The wind whispered again, and this time I was sure I heard words. Hunger, always hunger. The Ice Walker. Act 3. The Hunt. The morning we went searching for the missing family, I knew something was wrong the moment we stepped outside. The air was so cold it hurt to breathe. Our search party was small. Just me, Dave, and 2 other rangers named Sarah and Mark. Dave hadn't said a word all morning, and his eyes looked different. Empty, like frozen lakes. The Miller family was last seen near Crystal Ridge. I told the team, pointing at our map. We'll start there. The snow was falling sideways, even though there wasn't any wind. That's when I noticed our footprints were disappearing behind us, filled in by snow that moved like it had a mind of its own. We were only an hour into our search when Mark started acting strange. I'm so hungry, he kept saying, over and over. So hungry it hurts. I saw Dave looking at him the same way he'd looked at that frozen body yesterday. I kept my hand close to my gun. The radio on my belt suddenly screeched, a sound like ice cracking mixed with screaming. Through the static, I heard a child's voice. Help us, it's so cold. We followed the sound to a cave entrance. The walls were covered in thick ice that seemed to glow from within. Our flashlights showed something worse. Claw marks in the UV, huge ones, and what looked like frozen blood. Look at this, Sarah called out. In an alcove of the cave, we found old weapons, spears and arrows with strange symbols carved into them. They were perfectly preserved in the ice, like they'd been waiting for us. That's when Mark suddenly grabbed Sarah. His eyes had that same empty look as Dave's now. So hungry, he whispered, his teeth chattering. Need to eat. I pulled Sarah away from him just in time. Run, I shouted. But the blizzard outside had gotten worse. Much worse. Through the swirling snow, I saw something moving. Something tall and thin, running on all fours but wrong, like its joints were backward. Our equipment was freezing solid. My gun wouldn't fire. The mechanism was completely frozen. Even my flashlight was covered in frost, its beam growing weaker by the second. It's been here all along. Dave spoke for the first time, his voice sounding like cracking ice. Every 30 years it wakes up, hunts, feeds, and it's been feeding on us for days through our dreams, making us hungry like it's hungry. I looked at Dave and saw frost spreading across his face like spider webs. His eyes had turned white as snow. Run, Bill, he whispered, his voice almost normal for a second. Run. I can't fight it much longer. I grabbed Sarah's arm and we ran. Behind us, I heard screaming. Mark and Dave's voices mixed with that other sound, that horrible laughing wind. Through the trees, I caught glimpses of something chasing us. Something huge and white, moving faster than anything should be able to move. We made it back to my truck, but the engine was frozen solid. That's when I remembered the weapons from the cave. The symbols on them looked like the ones from Mike's warning paper. Suddenly I understood. Those weren't decorations. They were instructions. Sarah and I barely made it back to the ranger station. But as I write this in my log, I can hear that laughter getting closer. The temperature keeps dropping, and Sarah's starting to look at me the same way Dave did. I've got the ancient weapons now, and I've figured out how to use them. The markings show they need to be blessed by fire. I've got my road flares ready, because I can hear it out there scraping at the walls. And I know that soon, very soon, I'll have to face it. God help me, I think Dave was right. It's been feeding on our dreams, making us like it. And now, it's ready for the real feast. The Ice Walker, Act 4. The final night, the storm that hit us that night was like nothing I'd ever seen. The wind screamed so loud the windows rattled, and the temperature dropped so low that the walls of the ranger station cracked. Sarah sat in the corner shivering, but I knew she wasn't shaking from the cold. "Bill," she whispered, her voice raspy. I can feel it in my head. It's so hungry. I gripped the ancient spear in one hand and a road flare in the other. The symbols on the spear were glowing faintly blue in the darkness. Outside, something massive moved through the storm. The radio sparked to life one last time. Through the static, I heard Dave's voice. "Bill, come to the cave. Bring Sarah. We're all so hungry." Sarah suddenly lunged at me, her eyes pure white now, teeth chattering. "Need to feed," she growled, but it wasn't her voice anymore. I dodged her attack and ran outside into the storm. The cold hit me like a punch to the chest. Through the swirling snow, I saw it clearly for the first time. The Wendigo. It was at least 12 feet tall, with skin like ice and too many joints in its legs. Its head was a deer skull made of frost, with dozens of sharp icicles for teeth. I ran toward the cave, knowing it would follow. The ancient weapons needed to be used in its lair. That's what the symbols meant. Behind me, I heard Sarah, and what used to be Dave chasing me, moving in that strange, jerky way. The cave entrance was covered in fresh ice, glowing with a sickly blue light. Inside, I found the missing family, the Millers, all frozen solid but somehow still breathing, still alive. "You can't save them," Dave's voice came from the darkness. He stepped into view, frost coating his entire body now. "They belong to it, like we do." The Wendigo appeared behind him, its massive form filling the cave entrance. The cold coming off it was so intense I could barely move. That's when I saw it wasn't just eating people, it was turning them into things like itself. Dave and Sarah were halfway there already. "Fight it, Dave," I shouted. "This thing's been sleeping in these mountains for centuries, waking up every 30 years to feed. We can end it." For a moment I saw the real Dave in his eyes. He looked at the Wendigo, then at me. "Do it," he whispered. Dave suddenly grabbed the creature, holding it in place. "Now, Bill, I can't hold it long." I lit the road flare and touched it to the ancient spear. The symbols burst into flames, and the cave filled with red light. The Wendigo screamed, a sound like breaking glaciers. Sarah grabbed me from behind, but I broke free. Dave was freezing solid, still holding the creature. "Sorry, old friend," I whispered, and drove the burning spear straight through both of them. The cave erupted in blue fire. The Wendigo's scream shattered every piece of ice, bringing down parts of the ceiling. Sarah collapsed, the frost leaving her body. The Miller family started to thaw. When it was over, the cave was empty except for us survivors. There was no sign of Dave or the Wendigo, just a pool of water that never seems to warm up or evaporate. We got everyone out alive, except Dave. They found his ranger badge later, frozen solid and cracked in half. The official report says he died saving hikers in a freak storm, which is true in a way. I retired a week later. Some nights when it's very cold, I think I hear that laughing wind again. The rescue teams say that part of the mountain never really thawed out. They've put up warning signs, but how do you warn people about something like this? The ancient weapons are back in their cave, waiting. Because deep down, I know the truth. You can't really kill winter. You can only survive it. And somewhere, in those mountains in the deepest part of the cold, something might be sleeping, waiting, hungry. The Ice Walker. Epilogue. It's been 3 years since that night in the cave. I live in a small house in southern Maine now, where the winters aren't quite so harsh. My kids visit every other weekend, and I've never told them why I really left the Ranger Service. Some stories are better left untold, but I keep track of things. I have a bulletin board where I pin newspaper clippings and reports from my old ranger station. Every winter, there are strange stories from those mountains. Hikers say they see shapes moving in the blizzards. Temperatures drop to impossible lows in small, specific areas. And sometimes people still go missing. They never found Dave's body. The cave where it all ended stays frozen year-round, even in the middle of summer. The rangers put up signs warning about dangerous ice formations, but every now and then, someone reports hearing laughing in the wind up there. Last week, Mike, the Abenaki elder, came to visit me. He brought an old calendar with markings on it. 27 years, he said quietly. That's how long until it wakes again. I looked at the ancient spear hanging above my fireplace, the one I kept as a reminder. The symbols are still there, though they don't glow anymore. Will you go back? Mike asked. I thought about Dave, about how he fought it in the end, about the Miller family, who made it out alive but never speak about what happened to them. Yes, I said. In 27 years, I'll be there. Mike nodded and left. That night it snowed at my house, just a little, but the flakes seemed to fall in perfect circles around my yard. I keep the spear clean and sharp. Sometimes my kids ask about it and I tell them it's just an old piece of mountain history. But on cold nights when the wind blows just right, I swear I can hear that hungry laughter again. And I know that somewhere in those white mountains, in the deepest part of winter, something is sleeping, waiting, counting the years. I'll be ready. When it wakes up, someone has to be. The howl that woke me wasn't like anything I'd heard before. Not in my 13 years as a K9 handler. Not even during my time in the Rockies. It was 3 in the morning, and the sound made my dog Rex shoot straight up from his bed. Hackles raised, a low growl rumbling in his throat. Easy, boy, I whispered. But Rex didn't relax. That worried me more than the howl. As a former military K9, Rex doesn't spook easily. I'm Meg Sullivan, park ranger at Mark Twain National Forest. Been here 3 months since transferring from the Rockies, and something isn't right in these woods. I can feel it in my bones, the same way my Cherokee grandmother used to say she could feel storms coming. That morning I grabbed my gear and headed out with Rex to check the area where the howl came from. The spring air was crisp and mist hung between the trees like ghostly curtains. Rex kept close to my leg, another weird thing. Usually he ranges ahead on our patrols, but today he stayed right by my side. We found the tracks about a mile in. What do you make of these, buddy? I crouched down, my hand hovering over prints that made my skin crawl. They looked like wolf tracks, but wrong. Too big, for one thing. And the spacing. Sometimes they showed a normal 4-legged gait, then suddenly switched to what looked like 2 legs, like whatever made them stood up and walked. I pulled out my phone and took pictures, trying to ignore the way the hair on the back of my neck stood up. I've tracked wolves, bears, mountain lions, pretty much everything you'd expect in American forests. These tracks, they didn't match anything in my experience. Back at the station, I started getting calls. 3 different hunting groups reported seeing oversized wolves moving in formation through the trees. Farmer Johnson lost 2 sheep, but the way they were killed didn't match normal predator behavior. The bodies were arranged, almost like they were placed deliberately. Been meaning to talk to you, Ranger Sullivan. Billy Whitecrow, one of the local tribal elders, stopped by my station that afternoon. His weathered face was serious. The moon spirits are restless, the old stories. They're starting to make sense again. I wanted to dismiss it as superstition, but my grandmother had told me similar stories about creatures that walked like men but thought like wolves, about pack leaders who could bend minds as easily as I could bend a twig. That night, I checked the wildlife cameras we'd set up around the forest's perimeter. Most showed nothing unusual until I got to camera 7. The image was blurry, taken at dusk, but it showed something that made my blood run cold. A figure too tall to be a wolf, too wolfish to be human, standing upright among the trees. Rex whined and pressed against my leg as I stared at the photo. I reached down to scratch his ears, feeling the comfort of his solid presence. But when I looked at him, his eyes were fixed on the window, watching the darkening forest with an intensity I'd never seen before. Something was out there, something that didn't belong in any normal forest. And somehow I knew this was just the beginning. That week, everything changed. The regular wolves in the area started behaving strangely. We found them huddled in groups, refusing to hunt in their usual territories. Hikers reported finding weird arrangements of stones and bones in clearings, like some kind of ritual sites. And at night, the howls continued, but they weren't just animal sounds anymore. Sometimes in the middle of them I could swear I heard words. I kept my blessed hunting knife close, another gift from my grandmother. Some things out there, she'd told me, don't answer to ordinary steel. I used to think she was just being superstitious. Now, watching Rex stare into the darkness each night, his body tense and alert, I wasn't so sure. One evening, reviewing the day's reports, I found myself drawing the tracks I'd seen over and over. Four-legged, two-legged, four-legged. Again, like something that couldn't decide what it wanted to be. Outside my window, the forest seemed to hold its breath, waiting. I am a trained ranger, former military. I don't scare easily. But as I sat there watching the sun set through the trees, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching back. Something clever, something hungry, and it was getting closer. The moon was waxing, growing fuller each night, and with each phase the howls grew louder, more organized, more human. We weren't dealing with ordinary wolves anymore. The question was, what were we dealing with? And more importantly, what were they planning? I touched my grandmother's knife, feeling its familiar weight at my hip, and made a decision. Tomorrow, I would start preparing. Because whatever these things were, they weren't just passing through, they were hunting. And somehow I knew they were hunting us. The pack emerges. I'll never forget the first time I saw one clearly. It was during a routine morning patrol, just as the sun was starting to peek through the trees. Rex and I were checking out reports of strange noises near Thompson Creek when he suddenly stopped dead in his tracks. I followed his gaze, and there it was, standing in a clearing about 50 yards away. At first, my brain tried to make it make sense, tried to tell me it was just a really big wolf. But wolves don't stand on two legs, and they definitely don't stand 7 feet tall. Its fur was dark gray, almost black, and its eyes. I've seen wolf eyes before, but these were different. They held intelligence, purpose. The creature looked right at me, and I felt something push against my mind, like a headache coming on fast. Rex's growl snapped me out of it. The creature tilted its head, almost like it was curious, then dropped to all fours and vanished into the trees. But I knew it wasn't running away. It was just letting us know it was there. Back at the station, the reports started piling up. Martha from the local diner called about her son Tommy sleepwalking toward the forest at night. Then other parents started calling with the same story. Kids getting out of bed, walking like zombies toward the trees. Thankfully, someone always caught them before they got too far. I called Billy Whitecrow again. "The pack is testing us," he said quietly. "They always start with the children. Their minds are easier to touch." That night I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt that push against my mind again, like something was trying to get in. Rex stayed awake too, watching the door, his body tense as a bowstring. The next day, Jenny Martinez, one of our newer rangers, started acting strange. During our morning briefing, she kept staring out the window, her words slurring like she was drunk. When I touched her shoulder, she growled at me. Actually growled. We had to send her home. I found the cave paintings that afternoon. They were hidden behind some fallen rocks, probably uncovered by the recent rains. The images showed tall, wolf-like creatures standing over human figures. Some of the humans were kneeling, like they were bowing. Others were running. The paint was made with red ochre, and something about those ancient markings made my stomach turn. That's when I started noticing the pattern. The dogmen weren't just attacking randomly, they were picking targets, testing defenses, learning. Every incident, every sighting was like a piece in a bigger plan. I spent that night reviewing every report, every sighting, put pins in a map. The pattern looked like a spiral moving inward. They were surrounding us bit by bit. Then came the night of my first real fight with one of them. I was checking the perimeter near old Miller's farm when I heard screaming. Got there just in time to see one of them. Not as big as the first one I'd seen, but still massive, trying to break into the barn. I raised my rifle, but something stopped me from pulling the trigger. A force in my head, like invisible hands, gripping my brain. The creature turned and looked at me, and I heard words in my mind. Little guardian, you cannot stop what's coming. Rex's bark broke their hold on me. He charged forward and something strange happened. The creature tried to control him like it had controlled me, but it couldn't. Rex's military training, or maybe something else, made him different. I raised my grandmother's knife, the blessed one, and the creature actually stepped back. That's when I knew we had a chance. These things were strong, but they weren't invincible. They could be hurt. They could be fought. The creature snarled and fled into the darkness. But as it ran, I heard its voice in my head again. The alpha comes when the moon is full. I went home and started preparing. Silver bullets. Not because I believed in werewolf stories, but because I'd seen how they reacted to my blessed knife. Made sure every ranger had at least one clip of them. Set up emergency protocols. Established safe houses. They were hunting us, yes, but I was a hunter too, and I wasn't going to let them take my forest. The full moon was coming in 3 days. Whatever the alpha was, whatever they were planning, we had to be ready. Because this wasn't just about protecting the forest anymore, it was about protecting everyone. That night, looking at the waxing moon, I thought about what Billy had said, about the old stories, about creatures that were neither wolf nor man, but something in between. About ancient packs that hunted not just for food, but for power. Rex pressed against my leg, solid and real, keeping me grounded. Together we watched the forest, waiting for what would come next. The pack was gathering, the alpha was coming, and we would be ready. The hunt begins. The night of the full moon came too fast. We'd turned the ranger station into a fortress, boards on windows, silver-loaded guns ready, emergency supplies stacked in corners. 6 rangers stayed with me, including Tom Parker, my most experienced deputy. Jenny Martinez was still at home fighting whatever the creatures had done to her mind. They're coming, Rex warned me with a low growl around sunset. He hadn't left my side all day, and now his eyes were fixed on the tree line. I touched my grandmother's knife for comfort and checked our defenses one last time. The silver bullets were a precious few. We'd had to melt down everything silver we could find in town to make them. Each ranger had exactly 5 shots. They had to count. The attack started with howls, not from one direction, but from everywhere. The sound made my head spin. Through the window I saw shapes moving in the darkness. Tall figures running on 2 legs, then dropping to all 4s, circling our station. Remember, I told my team, don't look directly in their eyes, that's how they get in your head. But 2 of our rangers, Mike and Sarah, suddenly went stiff. Their eyes turned glassy. Before we could stop them, they walked to the door and started unlocking it. "Get them back," I shouted, but it was too late. The door burst open and they walked out like robots. We never saw them again. That's when the real attack began. They came through windows, through the roof. Massive wolf-like bodies moving faster than anything that big should move. I fired my first silver bullet into one that crashed through near me. It screamed, a horrible sound, half wolf, half human, and fell back. Rex proved to be our secret weapon. While the creatures could control human minds, they couldn't touch him. He moved like lightning, attacking their legs, keeping them off balance. Every time they tried to focus their mental powers on us, he would break their concentration. I got my first real injury during the second wave of attacks. One of them caught me across the back with its claws. The pain was terrible, but something strange happened. After that, their mind control didn't work as well on me. It was like the pain had built up a wall in my mind. "Keep fighting," I yelled. To my remaining rangers, "They can be hurt, they can be stopped." That's when I saw it, the Alpha. It was enormous, at least 9 feet tall when it stood up. Its fur was silver white, and its eyes glowed like ancient stars. When it looked at me, I felt the weight of centuries pressing down on my mind. "You guard nothing," its voice boomed in my head. "This forest was ours before your kind learned to make fire. It will be ours again." But something in me pushed back. Maybe it was my grandmother's blood, or maybe it was just pure stubbornness. "This is my forest now," I thought back at it. "And you're not welcome here." The fight seemed to last forever. We lost 2 more rangers to their mind control. Tom Parker got badly hurt but kept fighting. Through it all, Rex stayed by my side, his courage never wavering. We discovered something important during that battle. Their power grew weaker when they were wounded. Each silver bullet that found its mark made their mental attacks weaker. They weren't invincible. They could be beaten. By dawn, both sides were bloodied and exhausted. The Alpha called its pack back into the forest, but I knew this wasn't over. They were regrouping, gathering strength for something bigger. "They'll attack the town next," Billy Whitecrow said when he came to help us clean up. "The station was just a test. They want to know how we fight." Looking at the destruction around us, broken windows, claw marks on walls, spots of weird glowing blood where our silver bullets had hit, I knew he was right. This was just the beginning. I checked my ammunition. 3 silver bullets left. Looked at my team. 4 rangers still standing, all of them hurt but alive. Rex was tired but unharmed, thank goodness. "We need to prepare," I told them. "Next time, they won't hold back." In the distance, a howl echoed through the morning air. It sounded like a promise or maybe a threat. We had survived the night, but the real battle was still coming. And somehow I knew it would end in the caves where I'd found those ancient paintings. The Alpha was right about one thing. This forest had belonged to them once. But times change. And I wasn't about to let them take it back, no matter what it cost. Rex nudged my hand with his nose and I scratched his ears. At least I wasn't fighting alone. The sun rose higher, but none of us felt safer. We all knew, when the moon rose again, they'd be back, and next time they'd bring everything they had. The last stand. The lunar eclipse was coming. Billy Whitecrow had told me this was our best chance. When the moon's power was weakest, the dogmen would be at their most vulnerable. But they knew it too, which meant they'd attack before the eclipse began. We'd spent 3 days preparing. The caves where I'd found the ancient paintings became our battleground. Tom Parker, still limping from the last fight, helped me set up traps at every entrance. We'd melted down every piece of silver we could find in town to make more bullets. Rex stuck close, keeping watch while we worked. Ever since that first battle, he'd gotten stronger somehow. Braver, like fighting the dogmen had awakened something. In him. "They're coming." I didn't need Rex's warning growl to know it. I could feel them in my head, a pressure building, like storm clouds gathering. The scratch marks on my back from the last fight tingled, almost like they were trying to warn me. We'd evacuated the town's children to a church hall ringed with silver. The adults who could fight had joined us, armed with silver-tipped spears and blessed weapons borrowed from Billy's people. Those who couldn't fight stayed behind multiple rings of silver dust, another trick we'd learned from the tribal elders. The attack started with a silence. All the normal forest sounds, birds, insects, wind in the trees, just stopped. Then came the howls, deeper and more powerful than ever before. They came out of the darkness like shadows coming alive. Dozens of them, more than we'd ever seen. And leading them was the Alpha, its white fur glowing in the moonlight, its eyes burning with ancient hatred. "Last chance, Guardian," Its voice boomed in my head. "Surrender the forest, or we take it by force." I raised my grandmother's knife, its silver blade catching the moonlight. "Come and try," they charged. Our first traps worked perfectly. Silver nets dropping from trees, blessed spikes hidden in the ground. 6 dogmen went down in the first wave. But there were so many more. The battle was chaos. People screaming, guns firing, howls that shook the earth. I saw Tom Parker go down fighting 3 dogmen at once, taking 2 with him before they tore him apart. I wanted to help, but I had my own problems. 2 massive creatures coming at me from both sides. Rex saved my life twice in those first few minutes. While the dogmen were focused on attacking my mind, he went for their legs, giving me the openings I needed to use my knife. We'd planned to lead them to the caves, but they were smarter than we expected. They split their forces, trying, to circle around behind us. I realized too late what they were doing, heading for the town. But then something amazing happened. The townspeople, instead of breaking ranks, stood their ground. Armed with silver and courage, they formed a line that even the dogmen couldn't break. The Alpha roared in fury, a sound that made the ground shake. It reared up to its full height, twice as tall as any of its pack, and started glowing with a pale blue light. That's when the eclipse began. The effect was instant. The dogmen's movements got slower, clumsier. Their mental attacks weakened, but they fought even harder, like cornered animals. I fought my way toward the Alpha, Rex at my side. Every step was a battle. 3 more of our defenders fell, but we kept pushing forward. The Alpha saw me coming. Its eyes locked onto mine, and this time, there was no mental attack, just pure animal rage. We crashed together like thunder. Its claws caught my arm, but my knife found its shoulder. We rolled down the hill together, crashing through the underbrush, neither letting go. Rex was there, darting in and out, biting at the Alpha's legs. The massive creature was weakening. I could feel it in the way it moved, see it in its eyes. The eclipse had taken away its power, leaving just the beast. But a beast is still deadly. Its teeth caught my leg, sending pain shooting through my whole body. But that same pain cleared my head, just like before. In that moment of clarity, I saw my chance. The Alpha reared back for a killing blow. But I was ready. My grandmother's knife, glowing with a light of its own now, plunged deep into its chest. The sound it made wasn't a howl. It was older than that, a scream that seemed to come from the beginning of time. The remaining dogmen froze, their eyes locked on their fallen leader. Then one by one they began to retreat, melting back into the forest like mist. I lay there in the dirt, bleeding but alive, Rex licking my face. Above us, the moon started to emerge from shadow. We'd won, but the cost had been high. Too high. The Alpha's body disappeared as the first light of dawn touched it, fading away like a bad dream. But we all knew this wasn't really the end. "They'll be back," Billy said as we tended to our wounded. "Maybe not for years, maybe not for generations, but they'll be back." I looked at the forest, at the town, at the people who had fought beside me. "And we'll be ready." Rex pressed against my leg, solid and real, reminding me that not all the changes the dogmen brought had been bad. Some of us were stronger now, wiser. The sun rose over Mark Twain Forest, painting the trees gold. Birds started singing again. Life went on, but now we all knew what lived in the shadows between the trees, what walked in the dark of the moon, and we would never forget. Epilogue: 6 months have passed since the battle. The town has mostly returned to normal, though silver crosses now hang in every window, and no one goes into the forest alone anymore. I still work as a ranger, but things are different now. Regular wolves have come back, but they treat Rex and me with a strange kind of respect. Sometimes I catch them watching us, like they know what we did. Rex has changed too. He's more than just a dog now, though don't ask me to explain how. He understands things no normal dog could understand. The townspeople call him the wolf friend. The children say he can talk, though I've never heard him. We still find tracks sometimes, too big to be normal wolves. And on full moon nights, howls still echo through the trees. But they're distant now, like they're just reminding us they're still out there. People go missing sometimes, always on moonlit nights. We search, but we never find them. Deep down, we all know why. Billy Whitecrow says I'm part of the old stories now. The ranger who fought the moon wolves, they call me. I don't feel like a legend. I'm just doing my job, protecting my forest. But sometimes, on quiet nights when the moon is full, I stand at my window with Rex beside me watching the trees. And I wonder, not if they'll come back, but when. And I keep my grandmother's knife close just in case. After all, someone has to guard the forest, might as well be me. The first time I saw the strange fog, I knew something was wrong. Dead wrong. I've spent 15 years as a ranger in Allegheny National Forest, and before that, I jumped out of planes to fight forest fires. I know what normal fog looks like. This wasn't it. I was doing my morning patrol when I spotted it. A wall of white that seemed to glow from within. The mist moved against the wind, crawling between the trees like it had a mind of its own. My radio crackled with static as I watched it curl around a massive oak tree, leaving behind what looked like tiny ice crystals clinging to the bark. "Dad? Dad, come in." My daughter Sarah's voice cut through the static, bringing me back to reality. She works part-time at the ranger station during summer break. "I'm here, kiddo. What's up?" "We just got another missing persons report. Third one this week. Some hikers found an empty campsite up near Miller's Creek. Their car's still in the parking lot, but there's no sign of them anywhere." I felt my stomach tighten. 3 disappearances in 1 week wasn't normal, especially not in this part of the forest. Usually we might get 1 or 2 lost hikers a month, and we almost always found them within a day. "I'll check it out. Stay at the station, okay?" "Dad, wait. There's something else." Sarah's voice dropped to almost a whisper. "Last night when I was locking up, I saw something in the parking lot. It looked like a person, but wrong somehow, like they were made of mist. When I blinked, they were gone. My daughter isn't the type to make things up. After losing her mom to cancer 2 years ago, she grew up fast. Maybe too fast. Between my psychology degree and years of experience dealing with traumatized hikers, I know what fear looks like. Sarah was scared. "I'm coming back to the station first," I told her. "We need to talk about this." As I turned my truck around, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. The strange fog had changed direction. It was moving toward the ranger station. Back at the station, I found Sarah poring over old maps and local history books. She'd spread them across my desk, along with printouts of local legends and folklore. "Look at this," she said, pointing to a yellowed page. The Native Americans, who lived here, called certain places thin spots, where the boundary between worlds was weak. They warned people to stay away when the ghost mist appeared. I was about to respond when Rangers Mike and Jenny burst in, both out of breath and looking pale. "Thomas, you need to see this," Jenny said, pulling out her phone. "We were marking trails near Bear Run when, well, just look." The video showed a normal forest scene, then suddenly the image warped, like looking through rippling water. For a split second, the trees disappeared, replaced by a landscape I can't even describe. Crystalline structures rising into a purple sky before snapping back to normal. "That's not the weird part," Mike added. "We shot this video 3 hours ago, but the timestamp says it was taken tomorrow." I felt a chill run down my spine as I remembered something from my paranormal investigation hobby. Stories of places where time and space didn't work quite right. I'd always thought they were just stories. The radio crackled again, this time with a message from the park administration. All rangers were being called in. 5 more people had just been reported missing, and the fog was spreading. As I looked out the window at the approaching wall of mist, I realized we were dealing with something far beyond normal search and rescue. The forest I'd known all my life was changing, and I had a terrible feeling this was just the beginning. Sarah placed her hand on my arm. "Dad, what are we going to do?" I watched the crystalline formation starting to spread across our window. creating patterns that seemed to move when you weren't looking directly at them. First, we prepare. Then we find out what we're really dealing with. The fog was coming, and with it something that had been waiting a very long time to be found. I'll never forget my first real encounter with the thing in the fog. We were searching the area near Miller's Creek where those campers vanished. The mist was thick, turning the familiar trees into shadowy shapes. My flashlight beam seemed to get swallowed up after just a few feet. "Stay close," I told my team. Mike and Jenny were to my left, and Sarah had insisted on coming along. She said she could feel something about the fog that the rest of us couldn't. After what happened next, I believe her. The temperature dropped suddenly. Our breath came out, in white puffs, even though it was the middle of summer. That's when we heard it, a sound like someone walking through wet leaves, but coming from all directions at once. Sarah grabbed my arm. "Dad, look!" About 20 feet ahead, the fog parted. A figure stood there, tall and thin, its edges blurring into the mist like it was made of smoke. Where its face should have been, there was only swirling darkness. "Nobody move," I whispered. But Sarah took a step forward. "I can hear it," she said quietly. "It's hungry." The creature's head snapped toward us. In the beam of my flashlight, I saw crystals forming in the air around it, like tiny frozen stars. Time seemed to stretch like taffy. Mike's shout of warning came out slow and deep, while Sarah's breathing next to me sounded fast, like a hummingbird's wings. Then everything snapped back to normal speed as the creature vanished, leaving behind a trail of those strange crystals. Back at the station, we tried to make sense of what we'd seen. Sarah drew picture after picture of the creature, each one more detailed than the last. She said she could feel where it had been, like following footprints of cold air. "Look at this pattern," she said, pointing to her drawings. "It's showing up every 3 days, always around sunset. And the missing people, they all disappeared in the same areas where the fog was thickest." She was right. When we mapped out the disappearances, they formed a spiral pattern, getting closer and closer to our ranger station. That's when things got worse. Way worse. Reports started coming in from all over the forest. Hikers saying they walked for what felt like 5 minutes, only to discover hours had passed. Others claimed they saw landscapes that couldn't exist. Crystal forests, purple skies, buildings made of fog. I found one of the missing campers' sites. Everything was exactly as they'd left it. Food still warm on the camping stove, phones with batteries full, watches all stopped at the same time. It was like they'd simply stepped out of our world. The thing was getting bolder. Twice it appeared right outside the ranger station windows, pressing shapes into the fog that looked almost like words. Sarah said she could almost understand them, but trying to read them gave her headaches. Then came the night that changed everything. I was working late, going over the latest reports. Sarah was supposed to be home, but she'd texted saying she wanted to check something in the station's old records room first. That was 3 hours ago. When I went to check on her, the records room was empty, but the window was open, and outside, a trail of crystal formations led into the deepest fog I'd ever seen. My daughter was gone. On her desk, she'd left a note. "Dad, I know where they all went. I can feel it pulling me too. Don't follow me." But she should have known better. Of course, I was going to follow her. I'd already lost her mother. I wasn't about to lose Sarah too. I gathered every bit of equipment I could think of. Ropes, flares, extra batteries, an old compass that belonged to Sarah's mom. I called Mike and Jenny for backup. We all knew this wasn't going to be a normal rescue mission. As we geared up, I looked at the fog surrounding the station. Somewhere in there was my daughter, and the answers to what was happening to our forest. The creature had taken the wrong person's child. I checked my flashlight one last time and stepped out into the mist. The real hunt was about to begin. The moment we stepped into the thick fog, everything changed. The air felt heavy, like being underwater, and sounds came from impossible directions. Mike's voice right next to me seemed far away, while I could hear Jenny's footsteps crystal clear. Even though she was 20 feet behind us, Stay together, I said, following the trail of ice crystals Sarah had left behind. Whatever happens, don't lose sight of each other. The deeper we went, the stranger things got. Our flashlight beams bent in weird ways, sometimes showing us what was behind us instead of in front. The trees looked wrong, too tall, too twisted, with branches that seemed to move when we weren't looking directly at them. Then we found the first sign of the missing people. It was a campsite, but not one from our world. The tent was made of something that looked like silk, but felt like metal. Inside, we found a journal belonging to one of the missing hikers. The last entry read, "The fog thing showed us the way. There are more worlds than we ever knew." Time. Doesn't work right here. I think we've been here for days, but also maybe just minutes. "Thomas," Jenny called out, "look at this." About 50 yards ahead, the fog had cleared in a perfect circle. In the center stood what looked like a door made of mist, with those same crystal formations growing all around it. Through the door, I could see somewhere else. A place where the sky was purple and the ground was covered in giant crystals that hummed when you got close to them. "Sarah's in there," I said. I don't know how I knew, but I was certain. "She's trying to find the others." Mike checked his phone. No signal. But, guys, look at the time. All our phones and watches showed different times. Mine said 3:15 p.m. Mike's showed midnight. Jenny's was running backward. "Time's broken here," Jenny whispered, "just like in the reports." We heard a sound then, like someone humming a lullaby. But the notes were all wrong. Following it, we found more signs of the missing people. Personal items scattered around, some looking brand new, others aged like they'd been there for years. And everywhere, those crystals, growing like ice flowers. The humming got louder as we approached another clearing. There, we found them. All. The missing people suspended in what looked like bubbles of clear fog. They seemed to be sleeping, but their faces showed no signs of distress. And among them was Sarah, but she wasn't trapped like the others. She was talking to the creature. My daughter stood in front of the fog walker, her hands raised like she was having a conversation in sign language, but using movements I'd never seen before. The air around them rippled with every gesture. "Dad," she called out when she saw me, but her voice echoed strangely, like it was coming from multiple directions. "Don't interfere. I'm learning how to communicate with it." The fog walker turned toward us, its misty form shifting and swirling. Through Sarah, we learned the truth. It wasn't trying to hurt anyone. It was a guardian, protecting the places where different worlds touch. The missing people had been kept safe, preserved in time, because they'd accidentally crossed through tears in reality. "It's been trying to heal the tears," Sarah explained, her voice filled with wonder. "But something's making them worse. The barriers between worlds are getting thinner. It needs help." That's when we heard it. A deep rumbling sound, like the sky itself was cracking. The fog walker's form became agitated, its misty body swirling. "Faster! Something's coming," Sarah said, her face pale. "Something from the other side, something that's not supposed to be here." The purple sky above us turned dark, and the crystals all around began to vibrate. The humming turned into a high-pitched whine that made my teeth hurt. The fog walker moved in front of Sarah protectively, and I rushed forward to grab her hand. "We need to get out of here," I said, but Sarah shook her head. "We can't, Dad. If we don't help the Guardian seal the tears, everything we know, our whole world, could break apart." The rumbling got louder, and through the mist door, we could see something massive moving toward us. Something that made the fog walker look tiny in comparison. We had found the missing people, but now we were all trapped between worlds, with ancient forces beyond our understanding about to clash. And my daughter, somehow, was caught right in the middle of it all. The thing that came through the tear in reality was like a storm made solid. It was huge and dark, with lightning crackling inside it. Where it moved, the crystal ground cracked and shattered. "What is that?" Mike shouted over the noise. Sarah's face was pale but determined. "The Guardian says it's a void breaker. It feeds on holes between worlds, making them bigger until everything falls apart." The fog walker, The Guardian moved like flowing water, creating walls of mist to protect us. But the dark entity just crashed through them like they were nothing. We need to get these people out. Jenny was already working to free the missing hikers from their fog bubbles. They were waking up, confused and scared. Sarah, go with them, I said, but my daughter grabbed my arm. No, Dad. I know how to help. The Guardian's been teaching me. She pulled out her mom's old compass from my pocket. We need anchor points, things connected to our world, personal items with memories and feelings attached to them. I understood. Everyone, I called out to the now awakening hikers. Empty. Your pockets, photos, keepsakes, anything important to you. They did. Wedding rings, family photos, lucky charms. We placed them in a circle around us. Sarah and the Guardian moved together, their gestures matching as they wove the mist between the items. Each personal treasure began to glow with a soft light. The Voidbreaker roared, sensing what we were doing. It charged straight at us. Now! Sarah shouted. Lady Breaker slammed into the barrier we'd made. For a moment I thought it would break through. But then I noticed something, where it touched the mist woven with our memories and emotions. It couldn't get through. It can't fight against real human connections, Sarah explained, her voice strained. That's what holds reality together. But the barrier was weakening. The Guardian was fighting hard, but it was clearly struggling. That's when I knew what I had to do. I stepped forward, through the mist wall. Hey, over here. Dad, no, Sarah screamed. The Voidbreaker turned toward me. Perfect. Sarah, I called back. Your mom's watch. Use it now. Sarah understood. She held up the compass, the last gift her mother had given her before she died. All the love, all the memories, all the pain and hope tied up in that one small object. She poured it all into the Guardian's mist. The fog exploded with light. The Voidbreaker shrieked as the mist wrapped around it like chains made of starlight. The Guardian's power, amplified by the strength of human bonds and memories, began to pull the dark entity apart. But I was on the wrong side of the barrier. Dad! Sarah tried to reach for me, but Jenny and Mike held her back. They had to. The barrier was the only thing keeping our reality stable. It's okay, sweetheart, I said, smiling at my daughter as the mist began to swirl around me. Someone needs to help the Guardian keep the boundaries safe. The Voidbreaker dissolved into nothing. The tears in reality began to seal themselves. Crystal formations growing over them like scars healing. Everyone was going home. Everyone except me. As my daughter and the others faded back into our world, I felt myself changing. The Guardian's mist merged with me, teaching me what I needed to know. I wouldn't be alone. I'd be part of something ancient and important, a protector of the boundaries between worlds. The last thing I saw was Sarah's face, tears streaming down, her cheeks even as she smiled with pride. She understood. She'd always been the smartest one in the family. I love you, kiddo, I whispered. And then the fog took me completely, to be continued in the epilogue. 5 years later. And that's why we have the warning system in place, Sarah Walker explains to the group of new rangers gathered in the Allegheny Forest Station. At 22, she's the youngest head ranger the forest has ever had. When the fog gets too thick, or the crystals start appearing, we close those trails immediately. The new rangers nod, some looking nervous, others excited. They've all heard the stories about what happened 5 years ago, about the missing people who came back with impossible stories, about the strange fog that sometimes moves against the wind, about the former ranger who became something else, to save them all. After the meeting, Sarah walks her usual patrol route. The late afternoon sun filters through the trees, and a light mist rolls along the ground. Most people would find it creepy now, but not her. She finds it comforting. She stops at her favorite spot, a small clearing where crystal formations grow, year-round, no matter the weather. From her jacket pocket, she pulls out her mom's old compass. The needle spins lazily, just like it always does in these special places. "Hi, Dad," she says softly. The mist thickens slightly, swirling around her feet. Some might say it's just the wind, but Sarah knows better. She's learned to read the patterns in the fog, to understand the messages written in crystal formations that appear overnight. Sometimes hikers report seeing a tall figure in the mist, watching over them when they've wandered off trail. They say it guides them back to safety using paths of glowing crystals. The figure never speaks, but several people swear they've heard whistling, the same tune Sarah's dad used to whistle while doing his rounds. We had 3 cases this month, she tells the mist. But the warning system worked. Everyone got out. Safely. Your grandkid is due in about 4 months, she adds, touching her stomach gently. Jenny says she'll be a great junior ranger someday. The crystals around her sparkle a bit brighter, and the mist forms what looks like a hand resting briefly on her shoulder. Sarah smiles, blinking back tears. A crackle from her radio breaks the moment. Sarah, we've got some strange readings from the monitors in Sector 7. Mike's voice comes through. On my way, she responds, then turns back to the mist. Duty calls, love you, Dad. As she walks away, the fog follows her for a few steps, like a parent watching their child leave for school. Then it slowly fades, returning to its eternal watch, over the boundaries between worlds. In Allegheny National Forest, they say the fog is different now. Not threatening, but protective, like it's watching over everyone who enters the forest. The old warning signs have been replaced with new ones that read, Notice. In heavy fog conditions, please follow the crystal markers to safety. The forest. Guardians are here to help, and if you're very quiet and very lucky, you might hear a familiar tune being whistled in the mist, as Thomas Walker continues his rounds, protecting his forest, his family, and the spaces between worlds. Forever. Walking between realities but never truly gone. The warning storm. I've chased storms my whole life, but nothing prepared me for what I found in the Smoky Mountains. My name is Chris Reynolds, and I used to think I knew everything there was to know about wild weather. Growing up in Oklahoma, I spent my youth racing after tornadoes with a camera in one hand and a weather radar in the other. That passion led me to get my PhD in atmospheric sciences, and for years I thought I had seen it all. But that was before the lightning started striking upward. It happened on a quiet Tuesday morning in April. I was doing my usual rounds as a park ranger when I noticed something odd about the clouds gathering over Old Smoky. They were moving against the wind. I rubbed my eyes, thinking I was seeing things, but no. While the lower clouds drifted east like they should, the ones above were swirling west, like water going down a drain but in reverse. I radioed back to base. Jenny, you seeing this weather pattern on radar? Static crackled through my radio before Jenny's voice came through. Systems are acting weird, Chris. Screen keeps flickering on and off. Want me to call it in? Not yet, I said, pulling out my own weather equipment. The readings made no sense. The electromagnetic levels were off the charts, but there wasn't a storm system for 50 miles. That's when I saw it. A bolt of lightning shooting straight up from the ground into the clouds. My hands started shaking. Not from fear, but from memory. I'd only seen lightning behave like this once before, during the storm that took Mike from me. Mike had been my storm-chasing partner for 6 years before that day in Oklahoma, when a freak lightning strike hit him, despite clear skies. The doctors called it a 1-in-a-million accident. Now I wasn't so sure. The animals knew something was wrong too. As I hiked deeper into the park, I passed a group of deer running full speed in the opposite direction. Above me, flocks of birds wheeled in confused circles, their usual migration patterns forgotten. Even the air felt wrong, heavy with electricity, making my skin tingle and my hair stand on end. That's when I found the petroglyphs. They were hidden behind a fallen oak tree that must have toppled in the night. The rock face was covered in ancient carvings, spiraling symbols, stick figures with wings, and one central image that made my blood run cold, a massive being made of lightning, its arms reaching down from the clouds. I snapped some pictures and sent them to Dr. Sarah Whitecloud, a Cherokee historian I'd worked with before. Her response came back faster than I expected. Chris, where exactly did you find these? Call me immediately. Whatever you do, don't disturb anything else in that area. Before I could call her, my phone died. despite being fully charged moments before. My handheld radio went next, letting out a high-pitched whine before falling. Silent. Even my backup compass started spinning wildly, the needle rotating like it was caught in a blender. That's when the old Cherokee man found me. He appeared so quietly I nearly jumped out of my skin when he spoke. "You've seen the signs," he said. It wasn't a question. His weathered face was deadly serious. "The thunder being is awakening." "The what?" I asked, but another crack of upward. Lightning cut through the air, closer this time. The old man didn't flinch. Our ancestors knew of them. Powerful spirits that guard sacred places. They sleep until the land is threatened. He looked at me with eyes that seemed to see right through me. "You know storms, Ranger Reynolds, but you've never seen a storm like what's coming." I wanted to dismiss it as superstition, but my scientific mind was already connecting the dots. The impossible weather patterns, the electromagnetic anomalies, the ancient warnings carved in stone. Something was building in these mountains, something that defied every natural law I'd spent my life studying. As if to confirm my thoughts, a low rumble shook the ground. Not like an earthquake, more like the mountain itself was growling. The old man turned to leave. "Wait," I called after him. "What should I do?" He paused but didn't turn around. "Prepare," he said simply, "and pray you're ready when it fully wakes." I stood there as he disappeared into the forest, my mind racing. In my pocket, my dead phone suddenly buzzed back to life, showing dozens of missed calls from the ranger station. Whatever was happening, it was getting worse, and somehow I knew I was the only one who might be able to understand it in time. Looking up at the darkening sky, I made a silent promise to Mike. This time I wouldn't let anyone else die from an impossible lightning strike. This time I'd be ready. But as another upward bolt illuminated the mountain, I wondered if anyone could truly be ready for what was coming. Power builds I saw at first in the early morning fog. I was out with my partner Tom, checking on reports of downed trees near Cherokee Creek, when the mist ahead of us started to glow. Not like sunlight. This was different, like the air itself was full of tiny sparks. "Chris," Tom whispered, grabbing my arm. "Look up." Through the fog about 50 feet above us floated something impossible. It looked like a piece of storm cloud had broken off and come down to earth, but it moved with purpose, like it knew where it was going. Blue-white lightning flickered inside it, showing glimpses of a shape that made my stomach drop. Something huge, with wings made of electricity. Then it vanished, leaving only the smell of ozone and the sound of our own rapid breathing. "Tell. You got a picture of that," Tom said, his voice shaking. I checked my phone, but like every other piece of equipment near these phenomena, it was dead. Would anyone believe us anyway? Before Tom could answer, a boom of thunder rattled the trees. We looked up to see storm clouds gathering faster than any natural weather system I'd ever studied. They spiraled inward, forming a massive vortex over the mountain. "We need to get back to base," I said. But as we turned around, the hair on my arm stood up. That telltale sign of electrical charge in the air. "Tom, run!" I shoved him hard, just as a lightning bolt struck the ground where he'd been standing. But this wasn't normal lightning. It lingered, like a bright blue snake, writhing across the forest floor. Tom scrambled backward, but another bolt hit a tree near him, sending a shower of sparks everywhere. I heard Tom scream. When I reached him, his left arm was badly burned where he'd been caught by some of the electrical discharge. His ranger jacket was smoking. "I got you, buddy," I said, helping him up. "Just like old times in Tornado Alley, right?" But this was nothing like chasing normal storms. As I half-carried Tom back toward the ranger station, my mind was racing. The way those lightning bolts moved, almost like they were hunting us. Back at base, while the medics worked on Tom, I dug into the historical records. What I found sent chills down my spine. Every 30 years or so, there were reports of strange storms in these mountains. Unexplained lights, electrical phenomena, people gone missing. The dates lined up perfectly with times when new development had threatened sacred Cherokee sites. My phone rang. It was Dr. Whitecloud. "Chris," she said without greeting. "The petroglyphs you found. They're part of an ancient warning system. The Cherokee people knew about these beings. They're guardians, protectors of sacred land. But why now, I asked. What's different? You haven't heard? The county approved a new resort development. They're planning to build right on top of an ancient burial ground. My blood ran cold as I looked out the window. The storm system had grown enormous, now covering most of the visible sky. Other rangers were calling in reports. Strange lights near the old trails, equipment failing all over the park, and weird static coming through all our radios that almost sounded like words. That's when I realized the thunder being wasn't just angry. It was trying to tell us something. Jenny burst into my office. "Chris, you need to see this." She pulled up a satellite image on her computer. The storm system wasn't just over our park. Identical formations were appearing over other sacred sites across the Smoky Mountains. They were all connecting, forming a pattern I recognized from the petroglyphs. "It's not just one of them," I whispered. "They're all waking up." A crack of thunder shook the building so hard pictures fell off the walls. When I looked outside, the clouds had taken on a greenish tint I'd only seen in the worst supercell storms. But in the center, something was moving, something big. "Call everyone in," I told Jenny. "Every ranger, every emergency worker. And get me the number for the resort developers. We need to stop construction immediately." "You think that'll stop this?" she asked. I watched as another bolt of lightning shot upward, joining the swirling mass above. "I don't know. But I know if we don't try, what's coming next will make every storm I've ever chased look like a spring shower." From the medical bay, I heard Tom's voice call out in pain. The lights in the building flickered, and every computer screen filled with static. Outside, the wind began to howl. The thunder being wasn't just warning us anymore. It was getting ready for war, and we were standing right in its path. The storm breaks. The storm hit faster than anything I'd ever seen. One minute the sky was that sickly green color, and the next it was like someone had dropped the clouds right on top of us. Rain came down so hard it felt like needles on my skin. "Everyone, out!" I shouted over the intercom. "Head for the emergency bunker." We'd built it for tornadoes, but right now it was our best shot at keeping people safe. Tom was back on his feet, his arm bandaged but his face pale. "Chris, look at this." He pointed to his tablet, showing security camera feeds from around the park. Bright shapes were moving through the storm, leaving trails of electricity behind them. The thunder beings weren't hiding anymore. "We need to get everyone off the mountain," I said. But as soon as the words left my mouth, a bolt of lightning hit our communications tower. The radio room erupted in sparks. Jenny ran in, soaking wet. "The roads are blocked," she gasped. "Trees down everywhere. And the resort crew. They're still up there, trying to protect their equipment." My heart sank. Those people had no idea what they were dealing with. "Tom, you and Jenny coordinate the evacuation. Use the old fire trails if you have to. I'm going up to the construction site." "Not alone you're not," Tom said, grabbing his rain gear with his good arm. "Your arm is fine enough to watch your back." Besides, he gave me a weak smile. Partners don't let partners chase storms alone, right? The drive up the mountain was like nothing I'd ever experienced. The rain was so heavy our truck's wipers were useless. Lightning struck all around us, not in normal bolts, but in sheets that lit up the whole sky. Through the chaos, I could see shapes moving in the clouds, massive wings, bodies of pure energy. We found the construction crew huddled in their office trailer. Through the window, I saw something that made my blood freeze. One of the thunder beings had landed. It stood taller than the trees, its body a swirling mass of storm clouds and lightning. Where its eyes should be, there were two orbs of blue-white, electricity. It reached out toward the trailer with arms made of crackling energy. "Everyone down!" I yelled, running inside. "Get away from the walls!" The thunder being's touch sent electricity coursing through the metal trailer. Sparks flew from every outlet. The workers screamed. That's when Tom did something I'll never forget. He grabbed a metal rod from the construction equipment and ran outside. "Hey!" he shouted at the creature. "Remember me? The one you zapped earlier? Want to try again?" Tom, no. But he was already running, drawing the thunder being away from the trailer. Lightning followed him, striking closer and closer. I got the workers moving toward our truck, but I couldn't take my eyes off Tom. He was leading the thunder being toward the old Cherokee burial ground we'd found earlier. Somehow, he must have figured out its purpose. Then I saw it, the petroglyph stones. They were glowing with their own inner light, symbols pulsing like heartbeats. Tom reached them just as the thunder being raised its arms for a final strike. "Chris," he shouted, "the stones! They're not warnings. They're a message. They want to talk." A blast of lightning hit Tom square in the chest. For a moment, his whole body glowed like he was made of light. Then he collapsed. "No," I ran to him, but the thunder being blocked my path. Up close, I could see patterns in its storm cloud body that matched the petroglyphs exactly. It wasn't just destroying, it was trying to recreate the symbols. Tom's voice came weakly from behind me. "Chris, the patterns show it, you understand?" Understanding hit me like another lightning bolt. I grabbed my phone and pulled up the pictures I'd taken of the petroglyphs. With shaking hands, I held them up to the thunder being. The creature paused, its electric eyes focused on the screen. Around us, the storm's intensity dropped just slightly. "You were trying to tell us," I said, my voice shaking. "This is your home. These grounds are sacred. And we weren't listening." The thunder being's form shifted. In the swirling clouds of its body, I saw images. Native Americans performing ceremonies, storms bringing life-giving rain, guardians watching from the clouds. Centuries of history, preserved in living electricity. Then everything went white as the biggest lightning strike yet hit the mountain. When my vision cleared, I saw dozens of thunder beings circling overhead, their wings spanning the clouds, their bodies joining together into one massive storm system. The message was clear. This was just the beginning. Tom coughed behind me. He was alive, but barely. As I ran to help him, I saw the strange burns on his chest were forming patterns. The same patterns from the petroglyphs. The storm was about to get much worse. And now I knew why. Eye of the storm. The paramedics couldn't get up the mountain to help Tom. The roads were completely blocked by fallen trees and flooding. But strangely, Tom's burns weren't getting worse. They were changing, glowing with a faint blue light. That pulsed like a heartbeat. "The patterns," he whispered, his voice raspy. "Chris, I can feel what they want." When the lightning hit me, I saw everything. Above us, the thunder beings had formed a massive spiral in the sky. At its center, clouds were spinning like a whirlpool, creating a funnel that reached down toward the construction site. "They're not just protecting the land," Tom said. "They're protecting something inside it, something the builders are about to dig up." I looked at the glowing patterns on his chest. They matched the sacred symbols perfectly. Somehow, the lightning had connected him to the thunder being's memories. "What do we do?" I asked. "Get me to the burial ground," he said. "I know how to end this." I helped Tom to his feet. The wind was so strong now that we had to crawl part of the way. Lightning struck, all around us, but none of it hit us directly. It was like the thunder beings were watching, waiting. When we reached the burial ground, I saw something incredible. The rain hadn't touched this spot at all. The ground was completely dry, and the air felt different, calm and charged with energy, like the eye of a hurricane. Tom pulled out the piece of stone he'd been carrying, a fragment of the petroglyph that had broken off earlier. The symbols on it were glowing just like his burns. "They're not just guardians," he said. "They're messengers." The Cherokee people had a deal with them. They would protect the sacred places, and in return, the thunder beings would keep the balance of nature. He placed the stone fragment in the center of the burial ground. The moment it touched the earth, every symbol began to shine with blinding light. The thunder beings descended, their massive forms swirling around us like a tornado made of storm clouds and lightning. I could feel the power coming off them in waves, making my whole body tingle. Tom stood up straight, despite his injuries. "I understand now," he said, both to me and to the beings above. "The resort can't be built here. This place, it's a bridge between their world and ours. If it's destroyed, he didn't finish because at that moment the largest thunder being landed right in front of us. Up close, its body was like looking into the heart of a storm. Images flickered through its cloudy form. Ceremonies, storms, seasons changing, all connected in an endless cycle. Tom stepped forward and did something that made my heart stop. He reached out and touched it. Lightning coursed through his body, but this time it was different. Instead of hurting him, it seemed to flow through him like a river. The patterns on his chest glowed brighter than ever. "The builders," Tom said in a voice that wasn't quite his own. "Show them." The thunder being raised its massive arms. Suddenly, every piece of construction equipment on the mountain was surrounded by electricity. One by one, they lifted into the air and were thrown clear of the sacred ground, landing safely but firmly away from the site. The message couldn't have been clearer. This place was not for building. It was for protecting. Then Tom collapsed. Epilogue, that was 3 months ago. The resort company, after seeing the footage from our phones and the scientific readings we collected, agreed to move their project to a different location. The burial ground is now protected land, marked with new signs explaining its significance, both scientific and spiritual. Tom survived, though the doctors can't explain how. The lightning burns healed, but the patterns remained. Faint silver scars that sometimes glow when storms are coming. He says he still dreams about what he saw when he was connected to the thunder beings. Centuries of history, the deep magic of the mountains, the importance of keeping balance. As for me, I'm still a ranger, but my job's a little different. Now, the Park Service created a new position, Sacred Sites Guardian. I work with Cherokee elders and scientists, monitoring the weather patterns and making sure no one disturbs the places the thunder beings protect, sometimes on quiet nights. When storms roll in, I see familiar shapes in the clouds. Lightning that moves against the wind, thunder that sounds almost like words. And sometimes, just sometimes, I see Tom standing out in the rain, his scars glowing softly, talking to the sky. He says the thunder beings are still watching, still protecting. I believe him. After all, I'm a scientist. And the best science I know tells me that there are still some mysteries in this world that we're only beginning to understand. The storms still come to the Smoky Mountains, but now we know they're not just storms. They're reminders that some places are sacred, some powers are beyond our control, and some guardians never stop watching over the land they call home. Every time I hear thunder now, I smile and whisper a quiet thank you to the beings in the storm. Because sometimes the most important things we can learn aren't about controlling nature. They're about learning to listen when it speaks. The day I found the first set of tracks, something felt wrong in my bones. I've been a ranger here in Coconino National Forest for 12 years, and I know every animal print there is to know. But these weren't from any creature I'd ever seen. I crouched down in the red desert sand, my fingers hovering over the marks. They started as deer tracks, normal as can be, but then they changed. Right in the middle of the trail, they twisted into something else. Something human, but not quite. The toes were too long, the heel too deep. My hand brushed the ancient silver amulet at my neck, a gift from my grandmother before she passed, and it felt warm to the touch. That was 3 weeks ago. Now I wish I had listened to my gut and called for help right then. My name is Victoria Thompson. Vic to everyone except my mom. And I've seen things in this desert that would make most people run screaming. As a former combat medic, I thought I'd left the worst behind in the war. But what's happening in these canyons now? It's bringing back memories of the stories my Hopi grandmother used to tell. Stories I used to think were just meant to scare kids into behaving. The local tribal elders came to my station yesterday. Their faces were grave as they told me about the signs. Dead animals found in perfect circles, ancient burial grounds disturbed, and strange dust storms appearing on cloudless days. But it was when old Joseph mentioned the missing hikers that my blood ran cold. 3 people gone in 2 weeks, vanished like morning dew under the desert sun. The old evil walks again, he had said, his weathered hands gripping his walking stick. It wears the skin of what it kills. I didn't tell him about the dreams I'd been having. Dreams of my sister Sarah, who disappeared in these same canyons 15 years ago. In them, she's always trying to tell me something, her mouth moving but no sound coming out. The dream started the same day I found those tracks. This morning I found something that made those dreams make sense. Hidden in a dry wash, half buried in sand, was a small leather pouch decorated with symbols I recognized from my grandmother's teachings. Inside were bones, small animal bones arranged in a pattern that made my eyes hurt to look at. My amulet grew so hot it nearly burned my skin. Something is out there in my desert. Something that's been waiting, watching, and gathering strength. The elders call it a skinwalker, a human who gave up their soul for dark power. My grandmother used to say they could steal your shape, your thoughts, even your memories. I've called in other rangers to help investigate, but I can feel time running out. The dust storms are getting closer to populated areas, and the missing persons reports keep coming in. 2 more yesterday. A young couple who went hiking near Sunset Crater. As I write this in my ranger station, the sun is setting. The radio crackles, with static more than usual, and the shadows seem to move when I'm not looking directly at them. I've got my gear ready, medical kit, satellite phone, GPS, and the special supplies the tribal elders gave me. Sacred herbs, blessed water, and things I never thought I'd need in my official capacity as a park ranger. But the most important thing I carry is knowledge. Knowledge of what happened to Sarah, knowledge from my military training, and the ancient. Knowledge passed down through my family, because whatever this thing is, it's connected to my sister's disappearance. I can feel it. Tomorrow, at first light, I'm heading out to the restricted areas near the ancient burial grounds. The other rangers think I'm just checking on reports of vandalism. They don't need to know about the silver bullets in my backup weapon, or the blessed corn pollen in my pocket. The wind is picking up outside, carrying the smell of sage and something else, something that reminds me of decay. My amulet pulses against my chest like a second heartbeat. This time, I'm ready. This time, I'm not letting it take anyone else. But as the sun drops behind the mesas and the first stars appear, I can't shake the feeling that it's not just watching anymore. It's hunting. And I think I know who it's hunting for. I first saw it 3 days after finding those tracks. The memory still makes my hands shake when I write about it. I was out on patrol with Mike, one of our newer rangers. The sun was setting, painting the canyon walls deep red, when our truck's radio started making weird noises. Not normal static. It sounded almost like whispering. Probably just interference, Mike said, fiddling with the dial. These old radios pick up all sorts of... He never finished that sentence, because right there, about 50 feet ahead of us on the trail, stood a deer, but something was wrong with it. Its neck was too long, its legs bent at angles that made no sense, and its eyes, they glowed like hot coals in the dimming light. "Mike," I said quietly, "don't move." The thing that looked like a deer turned, its head to stare at us. Then it smiled. Deer don't smile, they can't. But this one did, showing rows of sharp human-like teeth. My amulet burned against my skin as the creature took a step toward our truck. I remembered my grandmother's words. Never look a skinwalker in the eyes. That's how they get in your head. But Mike didn't know that. He was already staring straight at it. "It's beautiful," he whispered. His hand reached for the door handle. "Mike, stop." I grabbed his arm, but he shook me off. His eyes had gone glassy, like he was in a trance. The thing outside took another step closer. I did the only thing I could think of. I yanked my amulet off and pressed it into Mike's hand. He gasped like someone had thrown cold water in his face, and the spell broke. The creature shrieked, a sound like metal scratching metal. And suddenly the air was full of dust. A storm appeared out of nowhere, swirling around our truck. I slammed my foot on the gas and we shot backward, tires spinning in the sand. When the dust cleared, the thing was gone, but it left something behind. A puddle of dark liquid that sizzled when it touched the ground. The same kind of marks I'd found near where Sarah disappeared all those years ago. Mike was shaking, staring at his hands. "What What was that thing? Why did I want to go to it? I told him everything then. About the tribal warnings, about my sister, about what the elders had told me. He listened without interrupting, which is how I knew he believed me. When you see something impossible with your own eyes, suddenly all those old stories don't seem so crazy anymore. Back at the station, things got worse. Reports started coming in from other rangers. Strange sounds on their radios, equipment failing for no reason, and the missing persons count kept rising. Then Jenny, one of our dispatch officers, started acting strange. She'd space out during conversations, and her eyes, they had the same glassy look Mike's had. When I checked her computer, I found she'd been marking down the wrong coordinates for ranger patrols, sending them to isolated areas. Setting them up, I called old Joseph right away. He came to the station with 2 other elders, carrying bundles of herbs and sacred items I remembered from my grandmother's ceremonies. "It's getting stronger," he said, looking at my amulet. "It's learned that you can fight it, so now it's working. Through others, through their fears and desires." He paused, his face grave. "Just like it did with your sister." That's when everything clicked. The night Sarah disappeared, she'd been acting strange for days, distant, like she wasn't quite herself. She kept talking about meeting someone in the desert who'd promised to make all her dreams come true. I'd thought she was just being a romantic teenager. Now I knew better. The skinwalker hadn't just taken her. It had called to her first, used her own wishes against her. The elders helped me set up protections around the station. Sacred corn pollen at the doorways, blessed water in the water cooler, small bundles of sage and cedar hidden in air vents. Jenny started acting normal again by the end of the day, though she had no memory of her strange behavior. But we all knew these were just band-aids. The real fight was still coming. That night I dreamed of Sarah again, but this time was different. This time she could speak. "It's kept me all these years, Vic," she said, her voice echoing like she was calling from the bottom of a canyon. "It keeps all of us, our shapes, our memories, our pain, and now it wants you too." I woke up with tears on my face and my amulet pulsing like a heartbeat. Outside my window, a dust storm was building on a clear, starlit night. The skinwalker wasn't just hunting anymore. It was declaring war. Tracking a skinwalker isn't like tracking a normal animal. I learned that the hard way. We started at sunrise. Me, Mike, and 2 tribal trackers named Daniel and Thomas. Old Joseph had insisted they come with us. "They know the old ways," he'd said. "They'll see what regular eyes miss." He was right. Where I saw normal animal tracks, they saw patterns. A coyote print next to a deer print next to a human print. All the same size, all with the same weird twist to them. The creature wasn't even trying to hide anymore. "It's taunting us," Daniel said, kneeling in the red dirt, showing us how many shapes it can wear. My amulet hadn't stopped humming all morning. It was like it had its own heartbeat, getting stronger as we followed the tracks deeper into the canyon lands. The sun beat down on us, but the air felt cold, in a way that had nothing to do with temperature. We found the first body around noon, one of the missing hikers, hidden in a shallow cave. He looked peaceful, like he was sleeping, but his body was cold and stiff, and there was a strange black residue around his mouth and eyes. "Don't touch it," Thomas warned when Mike reached out. "That skinwalker poison, one touch can let it into your mind." As we radioed for backup to handle the body, I noticed something odd. My sister Sarah's face kept flashing in my mind, but wrong. Like someone was trying to use my memories of her but couldn't quite get them right. "It's trying to get in your head," Daniel said, watching my face. "Your connection to your sister makes you vulnerable, but it also makes you strong." We pressed on, following a trail of twisted tracks and dead vegetation. Everything the creature touched seemed to wither. Birds stopped singing when we passed. Even the insects went quiet. Then we found the battle site. It was an ancient circular clearing surrounded by tall red rock walls. Strange symbols were carved into the stone, the same symbols that were on my amulet. The ground was scorched, in a spiral pattern, like something massive had burned itself into the earth long ago. "This is where they trapped the first one," Thomas said quietly. 100 years ago, the elders used this place to bind it. "But they didn't kill it," I said, understanding flooding in. "They couldn't, so they trapped it instead. And now it's free again," Daniel added, "looking for revenge." That's when Mike's radio crackled to life. Jenny's voice came through, panicked. "Vic, the station, something's wrong. Rangers are acting strange. Their eyes... Oh God, their eyes are black. The radio went dead. We all looked at each other. The creature had split us up, drawn us out here while it went after the others. But before we could head back, the wind picked up. Not a normal wind, this one carried voices, whispers, screams. The dust swirled around us, getting thicker and thicker until we could barely see. And in the dust, shapes moved. Human shapes, animal shapes, all twisted and wrong. "Circle up," I shouted, remembering my combat training. Back to back. We formed a tight circle, shoulders touching. Thomas started chanting something in Hopi, while Daniel scattered blessed corn pollen in a circle around us. My amulet was burning hot now, glowing through my shirt. The dust parted like a curtain, and there it was. The skinwalker. It wore a deer's shape, but parts of it kept shifting, melting, reforming. Human faces bubbled up through its skin. Faces I recognized. Missing hikers, lost rangers, Sarah's face. "Sister." It spoke with her voice, but wrong, like multiple voices talking at once. "I've waited so long for you to join us." "That's not Sarah," I said through gritted teeth, but my heart was pounding. Part of me wanted to run to her, even knowing it was a trick. "You're wearing her like a costume." It laughed. A horrible... Sound like rocks grinding together. Am I? Or did she give herself to me willingly? Ask yourself, Victoria. Why did she come to me that night? My amulet pulsed, and suddenly I could hear Sarah's real voice in my head. Not the twisted version the creature was using, but my actual sister. "Don't listen, Vic. That's how it gets you." The thing wearing my sister's face snarled. Its form rippled, and suddenly it wasn't Sarah anymore. It was me. A perfect copy, but with eyes like black pits. "Your sister was first," it said with my voice. "Now I'll take you. Then your friends. Then everyone in this forest. My prison will become my hunting ground." The dust storm closed in. Mike screamed as something grabbed him. Daniel's chanting got louder, desperate. Thomas threw his last handful of corn pollen. And my amulet started to sing. The real battle was about to begin. But at least now I knew what we were really fighting. This wasn't just about saving me, or even avenging Sarah. This was about stopping it from happening to anyone else ever again. Everything happened at once. The dust storm turned into a spinning wall around us. Mike was on the ground, something dark wrapped around his legs. Daniel kept chanting, his voice getting weaker. Thomas had dropped to his knees, hands pressed against his ears like he was hearing something terrible. And my amulet lifted straight off my chest, pulling against its cord, pointing at the creature wearing my face. That's when I remembered the rest of my grandmother's story. The part she'd told me the day she gave me the amulet. "It's not just jewelry," she'd said. "It's a piece of the weapon they used to trap the first skinwalker. A piece of its prison." The creature must have seen the understanding in my eyes. It lunged at me, its shape melting and twisting. 1 second it was me, then Sarah, then a mountain lion, then something I can't even describe. I grabbed my amulet with both hands. It burned like fire, but I didn't let go. The song it was making got louder, high and clear like a bell. "The circle," Daniel shouted over the wind. "Complete the circle." I looked down. The corn pollen he'd scattered was glowing, forming an almost complete ring around us, almost. There was a small gap right where Mike had been dragged. The creature saw it too. It rushed for the gap, its body stretching like black smoke. I didn't think, I just moved. 15 years of missing my sister, of wondering, of feeling guilty. It all came down to this moment. I dove across the gap, my hand still gripping the amulet. As I hit the ground, I dragged my other hand through the dirt, connecting the broken circle with a line of my own blood from where the rocks had cut me. The circle blazed with silver light. The creature screamed, not with one voice, but with hundreds. All the people it had taken over the years, all crying out at once, and one voice came through clearer than the others. Sarah's voice, her real voice. "Now, Vic, send it back." The amulet pulled harder, almost yanking my arms out of their sockets. Wind roared, sand flew everywhere. I could barely see, but I felt Daniel and Thomas on either side of me, holding me up. Mike was behind me, his hands on my shoulders, lending strength. The creature thrashed and fought, but it couldn't escape the circle. The ground cracked open beneath it, showing a deep darkness that glowed with the same silver light as my amulet. "No!" it howled with my sister's voice, trying one last trick. "Don't you want to see me again?" "I already am," I whispered, because suddenly I could feel her, the real her, standing with me, her hands over mine on the amulet. The creature's shape finally settled, showing its true form. It was darkness given shape with too many eyes and too many mouths, beautiful and horrible all at once. "You cannot hold me forever," it said, its voice like stones grinding together. "We don't have to," I said, "just long enough." The amulet gave. One final pulse, the ground split wider. The creature fell, howling, into the silver light. As it vanished, shapes flew out of it. Human shapes, animal shapes, all the forms it had stolen over the years. The last one was Sarah. She hung in the air for a moment, smiling at me. "Thank you," she said. Then she was gone. The ground sealed up. The dust settled. My amulet went quiet and cool. Mike broke the silence first. Is it over?" "No," Thomas said, helping me to my feet. "It's trapped again, but not forever. That's why the amulet will be needed again." "And the others?" I asked. "The rangers at the station?" "They'll be themselves again," Daniel said. "They won't remember what happened, but they'll be safe." I looked at my amulet, now hanging quiet against my chest. It looked different, older somehow, with new symbols etched into its surface. "Your grandmother knew," Thomas said quietly. "She knew you'd be the one to face it. That's why she chose you to carry the amulet." I thought about Sarah, about her last smile, about all the other people the creature had taken over the years. We hadn't saved them. They were already gone. But we'd set their spirits free, and we'd stopped it from taking anyone else. The sun was rising. In the early light, I could see the new marks on the ground. A perfect circle of silver-streaked stone, with symbols matching my amulet. A new prison, stronger than the last. "We should get back," Mike said. "The others will be wondering where we are. What do we tell them?" I asked. Daniel smiled. "The truth, some of it anyway, that we found the cause of the problems and fixed it. The desert keeps its own secrets." As we walked back, I kept my hand on my amulet. It had a new weight. Do it now. A responsibility, because Thomas was right. The creature wasn't gone forever. One day, maybe in a year, maybe in 100 years, it would find a way out again. But when it did, someone would be waiting. Someone with an amulet, and the knowledge to use it. The desert wind blew gentle and clean around us, carrying the smell, sage. And somewhere, just at the edge of hearing, I thought I could hear Sarah's laugh, free and happy at last. That was 6 months ago. Life in Coconino National Forest has mostly returned to normal, but things are different too. I'm still a ranger, but now I'm also the official tribal liaison. Every morning I meet with old Joseph and the other elders. They're teaching me things my grandmother knew. The old ways, the protective songs, the warning signs. The amulet helps me learn, like it's been waiting all this time to share its secrets. Mike stayed on too. He doesn't talk much about that night, but sometimes I catch him looking at the desert with new eyes. He helps me check the warning systems we set up. Little circles of blessed corn pollen and silver dust around on the ranger stations. They turn black when something evil passes by. The missing hikers were all found, with no memory of what happened to them. The official report says they got lost in a dust storm. Sometimes the simplest explanation is the easiest for people to accept. I visit Sarah's grave now. I never used to. It hurt too much. But last time I went, I found fresh sage growing all around the stone. When the wind blows through it, I swear I can hear her humming our favorite song from when we were kids. The desert feels different now. More awake, like it's watching. The tourists don't notice, but the locals do. They leave offerings at their doors, bits of cornmeal, silver coins, sprigs of sage, just in case. Last week, a young girl came to my office. She was wearing an old silver necklace just like mine. Her grandmother had given it to her, she said, and now it was humming. I looked at her and saw myself at her age. Saw Sarah. Saw all the protectors who came before us. Come sit, I told her. I have some stories to tell you, because that's how it works out here. The desert keeps its secrets, but it also chooses its guardians. And the stories, well, they're not just stories, they're warnings, they're promises, they're truth. Sometimes on quiet nights when the moon is full, I stand at my station window and look out at the canyon lands. The dust devils dance in the distance and my amulet hums softly against my chest. Not a warning, just a reminder. We're both still here, the desert and me. Both still watching, both still waiting. Because that's the thing about ancient evils. They don't stay buried forever, but neither do we stay unprepared. End.